At the beginning of the story, we see a huge cargo plane shaking badly in the sky in the middle of the desert. The sandstorm all around is so dangerous that the people sitting inside the plane start screaming in fear. Suddenly, one of the plane's engines catches fire with a loud sound, and the plane begins to fall rapidly downward. This is the moment when the most dangerous accident of the story is about to happen. But all of this did not happen suddenly. Behind it, there was a whole story that started a few days earlier. In fact, in the Gobi Desert of Mongolia, a company's oil rig is set up. The workers have been trying to extract oil there for many months, but extracting oil from this place proves impossible because there is no oil reservoir beneath the ground here. When the company learns this, it decides to shut down this oil rig. Now all the workers working on this rig have to be sent back to Beijing City. For this task, the company sends a cargo aircraft into the desert called C-19 Flying Box Car. The pilot flying this plane is Captain Frank Towns, who is considered a very experienced and strict pilot. Frank is accompanied by his co-pilot AJ, who is also Frank's very close friend. When Frank arrives at this oil rig with his plane, all the workers there are not happy to see him. In fact, everyone knew Frank by the name Shirt Towns, because wherever Frank's plane arrived, that rig got shut down. The supervisor here is a woman named Kelly Johnson. Kelly comes to Frank and tells him which workers need to be taken back and how much cargo needs to be loaded. Frank sees that the cargo is very heavy because all the machinery and tools are also being loaded into this plane. Here we also meet some company executive workers. As soon as the cargo and all the workers sit in the plane, suddenly an unknown man arrives there named Elliot. Elliot's name is not on Frank's passenger list at all, so Frank hesitates before letting him board the plane. But at Kelly's request, Frank also allows Elliot to sit in the plane because Elliot did not want to stay alone in this deserted desert. After this, all the plane checks are completed, and Frank gets ready to take off. Even though the plane is overloaded, it slowly lifts off the runway and begins its flight toward Beijing. All the people sitting inside the plane are talking to each other. But this happiness does not last long because after a short while, a huge sandstorm appears in the sky ahead. Frank's co-pilot AJ gets scared after seeing this and tells Frank that they should land back and wait for the storm to pass. But Frank refuses to do that because if they land back, they will not have enough fuel left to take off again. Frank decides to try taking the plane above the storm by raising its altitude. So Frank starts increasing the plane's height, but because the plane is very heavily loaded, this attempt proves very dangerous. Due to the speed of the storm, the plane begins shaking badly, and everyone inside starts screaming in fear. One passenger gets up from his seat and goes to the cargo area to tie down the luggage placed at the back. Seeing this, Elliot quickly goes to Frank and tells him to reduce the plane's speed because he fears that at such a high speed, the plane may go out of control. But Frank does not pay attention to Elliot and keeps pushing the plane forward at his own speed. Meanwhile, so much sand and dust starts entering that one of the plane's engines completely shuts down. Seeing this, Frank understands that now he has no other option except an emergency landing. Frank tries to contact the control room via radio, but because of the storm, no contact is possible. Frank tries to bring the plane down, but due to the storm, he cannot see anything clearly ahead. At this exact moment, the rear part of the plane crashes violently into a large rock, causing the back door to break open completely. The air pressure is so strong that a worker named Kyle gets blown straight out of the plane and falls into the desert below, where he dies on the spot. After that, the plane becomes uncontrollable and skids rapidly across the desert sand for a long distance. When the plane finally stops, the scene inside is extremely horrifying. Two workers named Dr. Gabber and Newman have lost their lives in this accident. Frank himself is also injured in the collision. A small fire also breaks out inside the plane, which Frank immediately puts out so that no bigger damage happens. Outside, the sandstorm has still not fully stopped, so no one can get out of the plane. Everyone left on board is terrified after seeing this accident, and some people angrily start questioning Frank, saying that all this happened because of his mistake. But Frank explains to them that there is no point in talking about all this right now, because what they need to think about is how they will get out of here alive. A few hours later, when the storm completely calms down, they discover that their entire plane is completely buried under the sand. Due to the strong winds, the sand slowly clears away, and the plane becomes visible again. All the remaining people fearfully come out of the plane and first begin checking their food and water supplies. Here they discover the horrible truth that they have only 1 month's worth of rations and water left. Frank looks at the map and tells everyone that they have drifted almost 200 miles off their route and that this place is a very unknown area of China. They have no radio signal left to call anyone for help. Meanwhile, a one-eyed worker named Jeremy comes forward and says that he can walk out of the desert because he has trekked many times before. But an experienced man named Reddy present there explains to him that it is the month of July, which is considered the hottest and most dangerous month in this desert. Reddy tells him that if he drinks 1 glass of water, he will sweat 10 times that much in return. After hearing this, Jeremy realizes that it is impossible to get out of the desert alone. The bodies of the 3 men who died are buried in the desert sand. This is a very sad moment for all the passengers, because they know that now they face a very big battle for survival. That night, all the passengers sleep inside inside the plane in exhaustion, so that the next day they can again look for a way out of this trouble. But in the middle of the night, a young boy named Davis gets off the plane to go outside to the washroom. Suddenly, strong winds begin to blow outside, and Davis's foot hits a stone. Because of this stumble, Davis loses his balance and rolls down from a sand dune into a deep ravine. Because of the storm, he cannot see anything around him, and he completely loses his way. To save his life, he also shouts loudly, but in the sound of the strong winds, his voice does not reach anyone. The next morning, when everyone else wakes up, they realize that Davis is not among them. Everyone searches for him in the desert all around, but nothing is found. Davis gets buried alive under the sand during the storm at night, and in this way, another member of their group becomes a victim of this dangerous desert. After losing another companion like this, all the passengers become terribly afraid, and their hope of surviving becomes weaker. In the meantime, Kelly, who is one of the strongest women in the group, goes directly to Frank. Kelly asks Frank whether someone will really come to find them here, and what percentage chance is left. Frank clearly replies that they are stuck in the exact middle of this desert, and finding them here is almost impossible. Frank takes responsibility for making sure that all the work is completed properly and on time so that their limited food supply lasts longer. Therefore, he believes the safest option is to stay where they are and wait for rescue. Hearing this, the other passengers become extremely disappointed because they begin to believe that nobody is coming to save them. Because of their fear, two passengers secretly begin planning to leave the area on foot with some bottles of water. But Frank catches them in the act and firmly tells them that nobody is allowed to take even a single drop of water away from the camp. A heated argument breaks out between them. During the struggle, one of the precious bottles of water falls to the ground and is completely wasted. In the middle of this argument, Elliot, the mysterious stranger, steps forward and tells everyone to calm down. He says that he has an idea that might save all of their lives. Elliot explains that he has been carefully studying the wrecked aircraft for the past few days. According to him, if everyone works together, they can use the remaining parts of the crashed plane to build a smaller aircraft. Everyone is shocked by the idea. Frank asks Elliot how much he actually knows about airplanes. Elliot confidently replies that he used to design aircraft for a living. Nobody really knows much about Elliot because he is not a permanent employee of the company. He had simply come to the area for some work and happened to be there when the accident occurred. After hearing this, a new ray of hope appears among the passengers, and they all agree to support Elliot. However, Frank strongly disagrees with the idea. He believes that building another aircraft from the wreckage is impossible, and that attempting it will only waste their precious time and limited supplies. The next morning, everyone discovers that one of their companions, Little, has disappeared from the plane without telling anyone. Kelly prepares to go looking for him, but Frank stops her and says that he will find Little himself and bring him back. Frank takes a bottle of water and heads out alone into the desert to search for Little. After walking for some time, Frank reaches the location where the rear section of their aircraft had crashed into the rock. There, Frank notices the body of the man who had been blown out of the plane during the crash. When Frank gets closer, he discovers something disturbing. All the clothes have been removed from the man's body, and there are several bullet wounds on his body. Frank becomes extremely disturbed by what he sees. At that exact moment, Little arrives, the very man Frank had been searching for. Little explains that he came there to recover his valuable watch from the dead man's body, because Cale had won the watch from him during a poker game. But when Little looks at the dead man's wrist, the watch is no longer there. Little immediately realizes what this means. Someone else is present in this desert besides them, and whoever this person is, they are dangerous enough to rob even a dead body. Frank tells Little to return to the camp with him, but Little asks Frank why he is against Elliot's idea of building another aircraft. Frank explains that he does not want to give the others false hope because he is convinced that the new plane will never be able to fly. Little then tells Frank something very meaningful. He explains that even if we cannot give someone happiness, at the very least, we should not destroy their hope of living. Little's words have a deep impact on Frank. Finally, Frank agrees to work together with everyone else to build the new aircraft. However, deep inside, he still believes that there is almost no chance that the aircraft will ever fly. Frank and Little return to the rest of their companions. As soon as they arrive, Frank tells Elliot that from now on, everyone will work alongside him to build the new plane. Kelly becomes extremely happy to hear this and thanks Frank for making this decision. After that, all the passengers begin working under Elliot's supervision to build a new, smaller aircraft from the wreckage of the old plane. During the daytime, the sunlight in the desert is so intense that working outside is almost like inviting death. Because of this, everyone decides that they will rest during the day and stay awake throughout the night to continue their work. Frank takes responsibility for making sure that everything is completed properly and on time so that their limited food and water supplies can last as long as possible. possible. At the very beginning, they build a fire near the plane and use a small generator to provide enough light to work in the darkness. But their problems become even worse one night when they are welding, and some sparks accidentally fall directly onto their fuel containers. This is the same fuel they had carefully saved for starting the fire and running the generator. As soon as the sparks hit the fuel, a massive explosion occurs, terrifying everyone standing nearby. Fortunately, nobody is killed in the explosion, but almost all of their essential fuel is burned and wasted. Frank tells everyone that they now have only enough fuel left for one final purpose: to fly the plane they are building. Because of this, they are forced to work during the scorching daytime heat instead of at night, since working at night without the generator is impossible. Working under the blazing sun is extremely difficult, but the passengers refuse to give up. They continue working with all their strength. After many days of hard work, they face their biggest challenge: attaching one of the plane's heavy wings to the correct position. They cannot afford to make even a single mistake, because if the heavy wing falls onto the sand, they have no equipment capable of lifting it again. Elliot explains to a passenger named Max that as soon as the wing reaches the correct position, he must immediately fit a rod into the proper place. He will have only one chance to do it. Everyone works together to slowly lift the heavy wing and lower it from above using a chain. But suddenly, the chain holding the heavy wing breaks in the middle. The wing slides rapidly downward and crashes directly into the aircraft's frame. Everyone standing nearby becomes shocked and terrified because they believe that weeks of work have been completely destroyed. At that moment, Max is already inside the plane. His job is to secure the wing from the inside by inserting the rod into the correct position. A few moments later, Max comes back outside and excitedly shouts that he has successfully completed the job. Incredibly, as the wing was falling, it had landed almost exactly where it needed to be. As a result, the outer structure of their new plane is finally completed. All the passengers are overjoyed when they see it. They celebrate by dancing together because they now believe that they might actually be able to escape this place alive. At the same time, they begin clearing the desert sand and preparing a proper runway so that their new aircraft can take off safely. But their problems are far from over. A few days later, a dangerous electrical storm arrives. Lightning begins striking across the sky. There is fuel stored inside the wings of their newly built aircraft, so everyone becomes afraid that a lightning strike could cause a massive explosion. They run away and hide in a safe location. But Elliot refuses to leave because he does not want to see the plane he worked so hard to build get destroyed. At that exact moment, a massive lightning strike is about to hit Elliot. But at the last second, Frank runs toward him, grabs him, and throws him away from the danger. Frank manages to save Elliot's life. Frank knows that if anything happens to Elliot, there is nobody else who can finish the remaining work on the aircraft. After this incident, all the passengers decide to name their new aircraft Phoenix. There is still some important work remaining on the plane, while their drinking water is gradually running dangerously low. One night, some of the passengers use binoculars and notice several strangers who have set up tents some distance away in the desert. Frank and Mark observe them carefully and realize that these people are actually dangerous smugglers who transport weapons through the desert and regularly rob people. Frank tells everyone that they should try to get water from the smugglers because they have no other option left. But Elliot strongly opposes the idea. He warns Frank that if anything happens to him, the Phoenix will never be completed. Despite Elliot's warning, Frank sets out with several companions to obtain water from the smugglers. For protection, Frank and one of his companions hide behind a large rock so that if anything goes wrong, they can provide cover fire from behind. They already have guns with them in case they encounter any danger. As soon as their companions approach the smugglers and ask them for water, one of the smugglers suddenly opens fire on them without hesitation. Seeing this, Frank and his companion immediately begin firing from behind the rock. They manage to kill almost all of the smugglers. During the gunfight, one badly wounded smuggler manages to escape. Frank has a clear opportunity to shoot him from behind, but he refuses because he does not want to become a murderer. Meanwhile, Little searches the bodies of the dead smugglers. Suddenly, he notices a familiar watch on one of their wrists. It is the same watch he had won from Kale during their poker game. This makes everything clear. These are the same dangerous smugglers who had robbed their dead companion's body and taken his clothes and watch. The group then captures the wounded smuggler and brings him back to their camp. Some members of the group become furious and want to kill the wounded smuggler immediately because his companions were responsible for the death of their friend. But Frank refuses to allow it out of basic humanity. A heated argument begins among the group. While the argument is still going on, Elliot suddenly pulls out his gun and shoots the wounded smuggler. After this shocking incident, a massive argument breaks out between Elliot and Frank. Elliot blames everything on Frank and angrily shouts that Frank was their pilot and that they are stranded here because of his mistake. Elliot also reminds Frank that he had warned him not to go to the smugglers, but Frank had ignored his advice, resulting in the death of another member of their group. Hearing these harsh words, Frank loses his temper and punches Elliot hard in the the face. The punch deeply hurts Elliot's ego, and he becomes furious with everyone and separates himself from the group. Elliot threatens that he will no longer help complete the Phoenix because he has already done as much work as he needed to do. He sarcastically says that he has been working here as hard as 10 people combined, while everyone else has simply been sitting around watching. Kelly approaches Elliot and tries to convince him that completing the plane without him is impossible and that they desperately need him. Elliot then gives them an ultimatum. He says that he will only return to work if everyone comes to him, apologizes, and personally asks him to come back. Because their lives depend on finishing the aircraft, everyone is forced to swallow their pride and apologize to Elliot. Even Frank approaches Elliot and apologizes. Frank tells him that Elliot is the one in charge of the project and that he must finish the job. Hearing this, Elliot's anger finally begins to disappear, and he returns to work on the Phoenix. A few days later, they use binoculars and discover that the smuggler who escaped that night has returned with a large group of armed men. However, the smugglers avoid attacking them directly because they know Frank's team now possesses the guns they took from them. The smugglers also realize that Frank's team will soon run out of food and water, so they decide to wait until everyone becomes weak, at which point they can attack them easily. Seeing the growing danger, the entire team works even harder because they need to escape the desert as quickly as possible. Finally, after weeks of exhausting work, the Phoenix is completely finished. But just then, Frank discovers an old magazine. Inside it are pictures of various small aircraft models. Frank is shocked when he realizes that Elliot designed the Phoenix by copying these exact small models. A horrifying truth is revealed in front of everyone. The aircraft Elliot had been talking about were actually small toy models designed for children. Elliot had only designed small remote-controlled model airplanes that could actually fly. But throughout his entire life, he had never designed or built a real, full-sized aircraft. When everyone discovers the truth, they become furious. A man named Ian becomes especially angry and immediately points his gun at Elliot's forehead. Ian screams that Elliot has been playing with their lives for weeks and that this junk-like aircraft will never fly. But Elliot has complete confidence in his work. Without showing any fear, he tells them that he is certain the aircraft will fly. Elliot admits that he only used to build small, remote-controlled model airplanes. However, he explains that balance is even more important in those small models than it is in a real aircraft, and he has perfected that balance in the Phoenix. Frank steps in and stops Ian before he can pull the trigger. At that exact moment, powerful winds begin blowing through the desert once again. The wind pressure becomes so strong that the Phoenix begins to lift slightly off the ground by itself. Everyone watches in disbelief. They finally realize that Elliot's design is actually correct and that the aircraft really might be capable of flying. The fire of hope that had almost disappeared inside them suddenly comes alive again. But the storm is so powerful that within a short time, the entire Phoenix is buried beneath the sand. When the weather finally clears, everyone becomes deeply disappointed after seeing the aircraft buried under the sand. They begin to believe that the Phoenix will never be able to take them out of this place and that all their hard work has been wasted. But Frank steps forward and gives everyone new courage. He tells them that they built this aircraft with their blood, sweat, and tears, and they will fly it out of this desert at any cost. Frank reminds them that their families are waiting anxiously for them in Beijing and that they cannot allow the sacrifices of their fallen companions to be wasted. Hearing Frank's words of courage, the entire team gets back to work with renewed determination. Together, they use all their strength to pull the Phoenix out from beneath the sand. They drag it onto the hard surface where they had prepared the runway. Elliot then approaches Frank and tells him that everything is now in his hands. He wishes Frank good luck. Frank then attempts to start the Phoenix for the first time, but suddenly, a small fire erupts from the aircraft's engine. The sound is loud enough for the smugglers in the distance to hear it. The Phoenix's engine immediately shuts down. Everyone's hearts begin pounding. Frank refuses to give up and tries starting the engine again, but every time the engine starts, it shuts down again after a few moments. Seeing this, Elliot and everyone else become extremely disappointed because they feel that their final chance is slipping away. Then, Frank makes one last attempt. This time, the Phoenix's engine finally roars to life with a powerful jolt. Everyone erupts in celebration, but the loud engine noise is also heard by the smugglers in the distance. They immediately mount their horses, grab their guns, and race toward the Phoenix. Seeing the approaching smugglers, all the passengers quickly climb onto the aircraft and hold tightly onto its wings. The reason is that Elliot designed the Phoenix in such a way that there is no space inside for passengers to sit. They had built only a lightweight flying structure from the broken parts of the larger aircraft, allowing it to fly using a small amount of fuel and escape the desert. The Phoenix begins speeding down the rough runway. Behind them, the smugglers continuously fire their guns at the aircraft. Because of the gunfire, a technical problem develops in one of the Phoenix's wings. Elliot immediately moves toward the rear section of the aircraft and risks his life trying to repair the problem so that the plane can take off properly. Meanwhile, the runway comes to an end. The Phoenix continues speeding forward and heads directly toward a deep canyon. canyon. A moment later, the Phoenix plunges downward toward the canyon. The smugglers following behind suddenly stop. They become convinced that the Phoenix has crashed into the canyon and been completely destroyed. Believing they have won, the smugglers stand there watching. But then, at that exact moment, something miraculous happens. The Phoenix emerges from the deep canyon and suddenly begins climbing rapidly into the sky at full speed. The smugglers standing there are completely stunned. They cannot believe that this broken-down aircraft has actually managed to fly. Meanwhile, everyone riding on the Phoenix erupts with joy. After weeks of exhausting work, their efforts have finally paid off. They have managed to defeat death and escape the dangerous and deadly desert, where surviving long enough to return alive had seemed almost impossible.